I love those words from James that we hear today. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. That is our arrangement with God. We have a crown of life waiting for us as soon as we make it through this wilderness in which we live. And I know sometimes it doesn't seem much like a wilderness, does it? We get all comfy in our recliners with our remote control and our refrigerators. And we just don't feel much like we live in a wilderness. We forget that we are walking through a wilderness. On the other hand, there are those days in which we are painfully aware of the brokenness and the sinfulness of this world. And I, for one, have come to believe that God allows those days to keep us mindful of the truth. To keep us mindful of the fact that we're not supposed to get all that comfortable in this wilderness. When one of those days hits, it feels like we're rats in a maze and God is a capricious puppet master just moving the walls around on the maze to frustrate us, or turning the lights on and off so that we run into the walls just to try to make life miserable for us. Like one day I had a few months ago, I was supposed to be somewhere at 8 o'clock and I was already running late. And as I got up from the table, I managed to spill an entire cup of coffee in my lap. So now I had to go change my suit. So then I'm headed out the back door, and I go out our kitchen door, out onto the landing, and step right into a surprise package that one of Danya's dogs left for me. And he was looking at me coyly from the kennel. I had yelled at him earlier that morning, and I'm pretty sure that revenge was plotted and executed. So then I had to go clean off my shoe, and I'm getting my shoe all cleaned off, and I'm running back out to the garage now and jumping in the car 30 or 40 minutes late, and I turn the key and I hear click, 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 click. And I looked up into the sky or to the roof of the car and said, "Really, Lord? Really?" But God takes no pleasure in those times when nothing is working for us. He's not a capricious puppet master. Like any good father, he is pained when the sinfulness and the brokenness of this world comes to bear on us, his children. However, like a good father, he uses those situations to help us. Sometimes to help us grow, sometimes to help us learn, sometimes to protect us. A certain child who shall remain nameless, but his initials are NR, and he's about 13, went to the dentist and learned that he had three cavities, and they were on different sides of his mouth, so he had to have 2 different appointments to fill those cavities and 2 different shots of Novocaine. When asked how often he was brushing his teeth, he said, a couple months ago. Now, I'm telling you, his earthly father did not take any pleasure in his suffering. But I have noticed that he has been far more judicious in brushing his teeth. And I use that experience with the dentist as a learning tool to help remind him of the consequences for not taking care of one's body. We have trials in this life. That's guaranteed because we live in a sinful world. And sometimes those trials are of our own doing, like failing to brush our teeth. Sometimes they are something that someone does to us, like when you get rear-ended on the Eisenhower. And then sometimes those trials and troubles are completely out of our control. You know, things like a tornado or a disease. But regardless of the cause of the trouble, we can be sure of one thing, and that is that God is always with us. He has absolutely promised that he will walk with us through all the trouble and deliver us when it is time. And see, the key is found in those last 4 words. When it is time. Not when it is our time. When it is his time. In the end, we will receive the crown of eternal life. But until the end, we are still learning and still growing. And when we are in the midst of trouble, it is easy to look up to God and say, "Really, Lord? Really? Is this necessary?" But remember that he is the perfect Father, the perfect teacher, and everything is there for a reason. See, because he has all the time in the world. He invented it. So he can take all the time he needs to help us learn and grow. And so instead of asking all the time, "Why me? Why now?" maybe what would be a more productive question? What are you teaching me, Lord? What are you showing me through this? Or maybe, what are you protecting me from? Like that day when my battery wouldn't start. There was a huge wreck on the Eisenhower. Was I protected that day from being in that wreck, which is right where I was headed? Would I have been injured or would I have been killed? We'll never know. But I am growing to learn to accept the little inconveniences that come into our life as God's work, as giving us an opportunity to stop and to breathe and to just look around for a minute. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. God never tempts us or teases us, but the reality is that we live in an imperfect world, and that imperfect world comes to bear upon us, and it's always with us. But then so is God. He walks with us through all of the trials and all the temptations and all the inconveniences. And in the end, he places that crown of eternal life on our heads. And that, my friends, is finally the only truth that really matters. We're crossing a swamp here, folks. Now, we can pretend if we like, and we can even call it Maui if we like, but it won't stop the poisonous snakes from biting us. And it won't stop the sun from scorching us. But God is with us. He sent his Son to die on the cross in our place. And because of that fact, this swamp is only our temporary home. We're on our way to paradise. And we are growing more and more faithful every minute we're here. And we will remain steadfast under trial. And once it is over, the crown of eternal life awaits us. It is ours, bought and paid for. So, don't let all the hyperbole on Fox News and MSNBC distract you and confuse you. God is always in control here.